You're listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash.
All right, everyone, it's been a minute, but we are back with episode 21 of the Leafs Nation Radio Podcast. I'm here with the crew. I got Scott, Nick, and Michael. I'm Caroline, and guys, it's a special day today because it is the 2-year anniversary since David Ayres became an absolute legend in Carolina, across the league, and unfortunately in the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, obviously becoming the first emergency backup goalie to win an NHL game. What a time to be alive for a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. And I want to know, just to get this podcast going, this episode up and running, what was your initial reaction when that happened?
Oh boy, where do I even start? Well, 2 years ago, I was we weren't even thinking about a pandemic. So that was probably the most stressful moment of my life at that moment. It's like, it cannot get any worse than this. And then less than a month later, it got worse. But yeah, it was a pretty stressful moment. It's always funny. We always say that whenever the Leafs lose, they don't just lose normal games. They always have to find a way to up the ante. And that was just probably as much as an up at the ante as you're going to find, although they'll always find a way to make it even more crazy and more ridiculous. But that's probably one of those losses that you're not going to forget. And you want to forget it because it's whatever, but everyone's going to remind you of it. And the Hurricanes, the social media team is going to remind you of it every single chance they get.
When you said 2 years or it's a special day, I thought you were going to say it's 2/22/22.
Well, that too.
And it's weird because 2 years ago, this happened. So it's 2 years ago that happened on 2/22/22.
So let's hope that this synchronicity of 2, it doesn't mean that it's foreshadowing another catastrophic moment for Leafs fans where we have to be like, okay, only this would happen to us. Only a Zamboni driver would go in net for the Carolina Hurricanes and beat us, our own Zamboni driver.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of lucky that night. I was hanging out with friends. So I was literally like, why is Twitter freaking out over a random 6-3 loss to the Hurricanes? And then I saw the highlights. I'm like, oh, that's why.
Valid. Absolutely valid. Yeah.
But not even watching it. I never actually experienced the in-game frustration. So it was just it was a cool moment. It was nice to see him do well. And it was funny that it was at the expense of the Leafs because it always is. It's a bit annoying that the Hurricanes like to remind it every month as if that's the only piece of relevance they have to cling on to. But other than that, yeah, it's just funny, especially considering how that season ended up. We didn't even technically make the playoffs that year. So it's just all irrelevant in the end.
I'm not one of those salty Leafs fans. I think that when stuff like this breaks at this point, I think it's actually hilarious and good for David Ayres. And I hope that there's this massive Disney movie that comes out of this for him. And what an absolute lifetime highlight. And I mean, as for the Canes Twitter account, I think it's one of the most entertaining social media accounts in professional sports. So whatever they want to keep pumping out, even if it's 100 years from now and they want to remember on this day, David Ayres was an absolute GOAT for us, I'm here for it. So that's funny. David Ayres, if you're by chance listening to this, congrats, man, and ride the wave till the end of time. All right, guys. Let's move on to some Leafs news that, obviously fans were not happy about the loss to St. Louis 6-3 on Saturday night and then Sunday to the worst team in the league. And it had to, of course, be against our arch nemesis, the Montreal Canadiens, a painful 5-2 loss. What the hell happened this weekend to the Toronto Maple Leafs?
I'll just use the words that Sheldon Keefe usually uses to describe a lackluster performance from the Leafs. They did not really pay much attention to the details. And more specifically with the game last night against Montreal, they were giving up far too many easy chances for them, too many odd man rushes. The defense basically left their goaltending out to dry. Both Jack Campbell and Peter Mrazek had to have far too many high danger chances faced their way. And I think I saw something their high danger save percentage is now either the bottom or second worst in the league, which is not good enough, especially for a team that has aspirations of going deep in the playoffs. they should not be giving opponents too easy of chances in regards to, like scoring chances. And I think we saw these last two games exactly that. Like you're not going to get by with lackluster defensive structure and not enough emphasis on, like giving a damn when it comes to like trying to limit scoring chances against. And if they keep playing like this, it's gonna seem like another the outcome for this year is probably going to be the same as it has been the last few years, which is one and done.
Oh my gosh. Hope not.
I'm just tired. Like I don't know. I see both sides of the situation. I see like people that are visibly upset about it. And at some points, you kind of agree with it just because of the way they've been playing. At the same time, though, they're doing fine. I mean, as much as you look into some of the stats, like they're 13-6-1 in their last 20 games. I mean, they've been good. And what I found is a lot of the games where it goes downhill for them, a lot of people start talking and a lot of people start stressing and thinking, oh, this team's not going to do anything. And as much as
that's called trauma, Nick.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like I was talking to someone last night and I was saying to them, like, none of this matters. Like as much as it does matter at some points, like game 1 of the playoffs is when it matters. And game 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, like as much as there is a lot of things that are maybe on the line here, it really doesn't get started until the playoffs. And I just think when people are so stressed out, the bigger picture is that they're going to make the playoffs. And that might just be the time when it's time to get stressed out. Like there's no point in getting stressed out right now when they're going to make the playoffs. I don't know though.
I mean, I agree with that. Scott, I'll let you go in a second, just quickly, just to comment on Nick. I totally agree with that because I think the playoffs are a completely different season, right? Like they got to make the playoffs, but when you're in the playoffs, it's kind of like everything that you've done in the regular season, cool, your accomplishments, awesome. But now is where you kind of really buckle down. It's like a brand new season. I think that Leafs fans, 1, have trauma, and 2, if they lost to the Blues and then lost to another team that wasn't the Habs, I don't know if it would be as like, headlines everywhere and trending on Twitter. It's just, it happened to the Habs, who are literally the worst team in the league. And it was a 5-2 loss. And they were like massive favorites on the money line. So I think just all those factors considered, people are like, what the heck? But yeah, Scott, go ahead. Let's hear your take.
So I'll be honest, I haven't watched too much of the last couple of games. I missed the St. Louis game completely because I was busy that day. And I had intentions of watching the full game against the Habs, but I'm going to let in Leafs fans on a nice little secret of a stress-free Leafs season. When it gets bad, turn the game off. You don't have to watch the whole thing. I stopped and I went and I drove 71 laps in Austria in F1 2021. And it was the best decision I made that night. But like, I look at a lot of the numbers for the games too. And like, they were the better possession teams in all 6 periods. So it's not like it was just later in the game, they took advantage of score effects. I mean, like the Habs game is obviously a little bit frustrating, especially with like how bad they are. Like Sam Montembeault, they could barely score on him, and he's had 5 other starts this season with a save percentage above .915. He's played like 22 games or something. Like he's not good. They should have lit him up, but they didn't, because that's just the nature of the game. And like same thing with the Habs scoring 5 goals, like going into the night. The night before against the Islanders, Josh Anderson scored his 10th goal of the season to become the first Hab to get double-digit goal totals for the year. Going into tonight's game, he would have been tied with Andre Cash for 6th on the team this season. Like, it shouldn't have happened, but it did, because that's how it is. Overall, like, I will say one thing that did bother me during the game was that second period power play when Keefe decided to start the second unit over the first, and then that basically killed any chance of like getting momentum at that point. That one was one, like, I get that it's a regular season game, so like sure, just like do whatever, but like I hope he doesn't pull that in like game 5 of a playoff series where like they're down early or something. But yeah, like the defense hasn't been amazing, but like I also don't think it's been as bad as everyone says it's been. Like Muzzin struggled, but that's because he's getting older and he needs a better partner than Justin Holl to be in the top 4 with him. And like even Justin Holl, like I saw people crucifying him last night, and I'm like, I don't think he's been that bad this year. Like he hasn't been great in a top 4 role, but like he's just, when he's out of his element, he hasn't been good either. Like I was surprised to find out that the worst defenseman on the team, based on like expected goals for percentage, is TJ Brody at 51.36%. All of our defensemen are positive possession players, but like you talk to Leafs fans and it seems like that's not the case. Now, it doesn't help that since the end of like the start, since we came back from the COVID break at the beginning of January, the Leafs have the second worst save percentage in the league. So I think that's probably a big reason why Leafs fans thinks that the defense sucks, is because we're allowing more goals, when that's more on the fact that Jack Campbell is regressing and Peter Mrazek has been struggling this year. So yeah, like I look at the numbers and I think like I'm not overly worried. We're 50 games into the season at this point, and there's been 45 games where this team has shown us that they're fine. And then there's been like a few random games here and there, like last night, where it isn't. The only way I will be really mad at this loss is if it convinces Kyle Dubas to trade for Ben Sherrod.
So basically, good moments, there are bad moments sprinkled in there, but like Nick said, it's like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not catastrophic. Like we're still hopefully making the playoffs, and when playoffs come, you know, they hopefully go to another level.
Exactly. Like that's the time when they do it, and
Yeah.
or when they have to do it. And it's going to be interesting, especially coming into the trade deadline, if they can acquire. I know they got Labushkin, but with Jake Muzzin's injury, you never know. Like maybe they go for another defenseman. Who knows? But it'll be really fun the next few months to see what they do.
You bring up Jake Muzzin. Let's talk about that quickly. Obviously a big collision for him against the Habs. We know that he's already been dealing with concussion issues from earlier in the season, not too long ago either. Like you hate to see it. Obviously concussions, brain injuries, very, very serious, and they have to be taken seriously. A tweet yesterday said that he went to the hospital for tests, not traveling with the Leafs to Columbus tonight. No further info per Sheldon Keefe. I'm not sure if there's been an update since that tweet, but just obviously not something you want to see from Muzzin. Very happy to see him get off the ice himself. But again, concussion, something that what's tough with brain injuries, you know, it's like you hurt your knee, you hurt your ankle, you can see the injury, you can understand what's going on almost, but with a brain, you don't know. And sometimes there are these prolonged symptoms and issues, and he needs to take care of himself. And obviously not something that Leafs fans want to see Jake Muzzin go through again.
Absolutely. And it's more damning because he literally just came back from a concussion not too long ago. Mm-hmm. It took quite a long time for him to even come back to this point. There was a potential talks of him returning before the All-Star break, but it took every precaution necessary to make sure that he'd be back to full health. So any setback of any kind is not going to be good in long term. And when you consider that his contract is pretty hefty, I think, what is it, around $5 million or something like that? Like you'd expect to make sure that his health is a top priority. So I would imagine that like obviously Kyle Dubas was concerned for Muzzin's health, and it was encouraging that he was able to get off the ice on his own feet. Obviously he's not playing tonight, and he didn't come back for the rest of the third period, but it's those kind of injuries where you're like, if we want Jake Muzzin to be available for the playoffs, we need to make sure his health is a top priority. So there may have to be a conversation where they have to say, okay, we might have to shut you down for a little bit and put you on LTIR.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough. Like Caroline, like you said, like concussions are a tough thing. Like I know I've played hockey and I've got a few concussions and they're not enjoyable. Like especially like when you look at especially how fast that game is, like when his head hit the ice like that, there's you look at that moment and you think about him having that concussion a month ago probably, and you just think there's no sense in bringing him back anytime soon. Like he's got a family, he's got kids. Like this, like concussions are so much worse than everything just because like there's points like you get a concussion and people tell you not to go to bed because there's always that possibility of other things happening. But to me, like you just feel for the guy, but you just hope that he sits down and he understands the magnitude of it, and I'm sure he does, but just that he understands that, hey, like it's okay to take a break, it's okay to step away and not play. Like his health is way more important than I think the Leafs winning the Stanley Cup. Like as much as that's a thing, like it's worth him just taking as much time as he can, and if he can come back, then that's amazing. But at the same time, his family and his life after hockey is more important.
And you know what's crazy, Nick? Like I totally 1000% agree with you. It's crazy with concussions. And for anyone listening who's experienced one, and I know Nick, you have, because you just said, Scott, Michael, I'm not sure if you have, but it's almost like if you keep putting yourself in these positions where your brain is being stimulated and that concussion is being aggravated, it prolongs your recovery time. It's so difficult to understand. And the symptoms and the side effects are so like you're fatigued or your eyes hurt or you don't understand why you feel so lethargic. And then sometimes you're super wired and you have terrible headaches and your eyes are glazed over. There's just so many things that are very hard to understand if you're putting yourself in these positions where you're not letting your brain rest and all of a sudden trying to come back quickly or trying to do day-to-day tasks like be on your cell phone or read a book or watch a TV show. And then you're wondering why you're not feeling better. It's just so difficult. And my heart goes out to any athlete who deals with concussions. And I just feel so bad for Muzzin because again, like we saw, earlier this month in January, he was, trying to recover, and this one's gotta affect him big time. And you just gotta hope that he takes that time because like Nick just said, his family, his life, the quality of his life, his health is way more important than any game, any Stanley Cup at this point.
Yeah, like I think back to the Tavares injury against Montreal last season, and like I just remember in that moment when it happened, I did not care about the Leafs winning the Stanley Cup anymore. Like it's a scary situation, and I really hope the best for him. Obviously, it'd be great if he could come back at some point in the season, but if he can't, on the bright side, I guess, not that there is a big bright side, but this is a nice opportunity for Rasmus Sandin, because I think he's been like on the verge of stepping up into a bigger role, and I think he could, in theory, be the big acquisition on defense we need, if you get what I mean, like moving him up. And maybe like they tried Muzzin and Sandin, and honestly, I didn't hate that pairing too much. Is definitely a little bit better than Hall. So I think it'll be nice to see what we have in the future with Sandin there, especially if like Muzzin's health is a bit more long term. Also, they can LTIR him and maybe they get another big addition on defense that they can make fit under with all the more cap space that they'll have. That's such a very like not caring about his situation. Be like, oh yeah, look at how this benefits the Leafs. But like, yeah, no, I hope that he obviously gets better. And like hopefully it means well. Hopefully he can come back for the playoffs. If he can't, it shouldn't be the end of the world for Leafs fans either. Like his health is the most important thing.
I know that Leafs fans are like a tough group, but I'm sure everyone is on the same page with us. Like obviously his health is the most important and everyone's rooting for him. And Scott, you're our businessman in that discussion.
This is what happened.
We know you're you care, but that was a business answer. I like it. All right, guys, quickly, let's move on to another trending topic because I love when something about the Toronto Maple Leafs or a player on the Leafs is trending because I'm like, what's happening? Quiet stretch for John Tavares at the moment. 9 straight games without a goal, 2 shots total in his last 4 games. Obviously, 46 points in 40 games played so far for our captain. Why the quiet stretch? What's changed for him? And, Michael, you had a good tweet on Twitter the other day that maybe you want to talk about that for the Leafs and maybe for Tavares' success, that line's just not working and it needs to change.
Yeah, that tweet has been like built up because of weeks of watching the Tavares line, which has been the one line that has more or less stayed the same throughout the year, just going through a pretty significant rough patch. Like obviously on Saturday night, we saw Nylander finally slump his goal slump with 2, which has been awesome to see. But from what I've seen over the last few weeks, like when the Tavares line steps on the ice, they don't really, like at least for the last few weeks, they don't seem to be propelling momentum in the Leafs' favor or like carrying the momentum. It feels like it kind of halts, and then you wait for the line that's going to actually keep the momentum going. So like maybe it's because they've been playing for so many minutes together. From what I saw, it's like over 300 minutes up to this point, and inevitably some regression is going to come into effect. But it might be time to shuffle the line a little bit because, the third line has been fantastic this year, and it's been great to see Kasha, Mikheyev, and Comp have a lot of success. But it would be in the Leafs' best interest to try and experiment with a different look on the second line. You could try Marner on the second line and Nylander on the first line, or you could try something more simple. What I think would be the play to go, or at least for tonight's game, and try for a little bit, would be swapping Kerfoot and Kasha, having Kasha with the Tavares line, and then having Kerfoot down on the third line. See if that sparks anything, because right now Tavares is playing like his numbers are solid. That's not going to change, and he's going to still put up the points, which is what you want the captain to do. But we want to see Tavares go on a run just for his confidence and just going forward. So like you don't have to rely so much on the Matthews line, which they had a really good game yesterday, even though they didn't really get any offense to go. But it just puts less pressure on them. Like if the Tavares line and the Matthews line are going, it's great. And I would love to see the Tavares line start to go on a run. And I think the only way you can really do that is if you just shuffle the line, because sticking to it is just going to lead to more frustration.
Yeah. I think the biggest issue with that line as well is just they don't really have a true play driver on that line anymore. Because since the Nylander Tavares pairing has been a thing since the 2019-20 season, like that season Tavares was still like John Tavares and like a dominant force on the ice. And they also had Hyman on that line for a lot of the time, I believe, as well. So like that also played into effect. And then last season, Nylander was actually more of the play driver and was actually like putting the reason why Tavares was doing well. But this season, neither of them have really been that. I know, right? Me saying anything bad about William Nylander, shocker. And then like Kerfoot, as good as he's looked, a lot of that has just been the goals are going in, but not so much the substance that goes with it. I think like when we talked several podcasts back now, like you look at his RAPM chart and it's the goals line is all the way at the top and everything's like along the line in the middle. So like I think that could play a role. And yeah, shuffling the lines, like Michael said, it was probably like the smartest idea, whether that's you swap Kerfoot and Bunting, you swap Kerfoot with Kosh, Marner with Nylander, stuff like that. I think that could maybe you go Tavares, Matthews, Nylander. That'd be a bit excessive, but and like for JT in general, I'm not overly concerned because like it's John Tavares. I think it's probably just a cold spell more than anything. Like looking at his numbers, he has 2.41 individual expected goals over this 9-game drought. So like he should probably have more than 0. Age will always be a concern for him at this point, because it's like he's at that point in his career where it's like, when is he going to start tailing off? Hopefully that's not the case. But yeah, I definitely agree with Michael. A shakeup is probably what is needed.
I'm gonna disagree with you both.
Nick Barnum Price. I like it.
I'm gonna just like, as much as there is a cold spell, my computer's turned off. I don't know, like that line's been so good together. It's been like 9 games, but if you look at the season as a whole, like they haven't been bad. And I don't like when you talk about switching up, like any other lines, like the Matthews line, I think they've been good enough where you really shouldn't look at changing it up at all. I mean, I could be wrong in that with like advanced analytics, but you look at the third line, and as good as they're doing too, I don't know if there should be any switching up there. And then you look at the fourth line, and you're not going to bring Pierre Engvall up to the second line. So I don't know. I think it's the same answer with the Leafs in the playoffs. Like I think they'll be fine. It's just a little rough patch, like Scott said. And I mean, if it continues, I'd say over a 15-game stretch, like that's when you might start to maybe stress out a little bit more. I think right now, though, like those 3 guys, it's not like they forget how to play with each other or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of John Tavares scoring a goal and then they'll be back, or them just creating something. And then once they find that rhythm again and get back into it, there'll be a good second line.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. I wonder, once they start finding the rhythm again, if they start producing again as a whole entire line.
I know, like especially when I was doing the like Know Your Enemy series and doing a lot of like line by line breakdowns. So I was like looking at each line's numbers every game, and that JT line was pretty consistently just like average at driving play, which I think is my biggest concern with it. Like whenever I was doing matchups, I'd always find the easiest matchup and give that to the JT line, because they doesn't seem like they can handle bigger minutes at this point, which is why I wouldn't be opposed to a shakeup, especially because like I know like it is the regular season and it's not something to get concerned about, but like that's also why it's good to like try new things as well, because if it doesn't work out, then it's not a big deal. You know it doesn't work and you won't try it in the playoffs. But like I think they should change it, just because like if you don't, then you're gonna find that line not working in the playoffs and you're like, oh well, what do? We don't know what else works. I think that could be, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Scott, too. I think regular season, why not? Try it out. Got to be creative. I think that's where, we talk about the responsibilities players have, but then we talk about the responsibilities coaches have, and their jobs to tactically be creative. And if something's not working, I can see Nick's side where maybe he wants the sample size to be a little larger before you start mixing things around. And maybe it's tonight where that line finds their rhythm and John Tavares scores a goal, right? But I personally always on the side of like mixing things up when there's kind of been a little bit of a slump, and maybe you can always go back to that original line, right? Like I think movement sometimes is okay, but I can see both sides for sure.
Yeah, I just think back to like all those years of Mike Babcock shoving the square peg into the round hole over and over again. And like he would like do a facade of like, oh, I'm changing it up, and like the starting lineups would be different, and then like 5 minutes in he'd change it back if they didn't have a shift. Like so like we know it can work. And we know it's struggling now, so why not just see what else works?
Awesome. We'll see what happens tonight against Columbus. We'll get into that game in just a second. But right now, a decision that I think a lot of Leafs fans weren't too happy about was when the Leafs acquired Carter Hutton from the Yotes in exchange for future considerations. There was another deal Dubas did that fans liked, but this one, we'll get into that in a second. This one, fans weren't quite sure the thought process around. What do you guys think about this Carter Hutton acquired player now on the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Go ahead, Michael.
Oh, just pretty straightforward. It's a basically a nothing trade, but I'm going to be very sad to see future considerations go again. That guy always seems to be on the move.
I didn't know that you were able to loan an AHL player to another team. So, like when you look at, I think it was Craig Morgan. I don't know if that's his name, but he reported that Hutton's not going to come to Toronto and he's just going to stay in. Is it I think it's Tuscan or something like that. Yeah, Tuscan Roadrunners, I think. But just stay there. I don't know what the point of it was in that sense. Scott, what are you gonna say?
Well, like I think from what I've heard, a lot of it is just like Arizona wanted to move a contract because I think they wanted to, like, as we know, you can only have 50 contracts signed to your NHL roster. So I think they wanted to move one, and I feel like there was probably some kind of a handshake agreement with Arizona with the initial trade where Toronto had intentions of sending Ryan Dzingel down to the Marlies, and if he got claimed, then they'd take another one. I think, and a lot of it too is just injury insurance. Like we've seen, like how many cup runs has been ruined by Colorado because they don't have any like back. They lost their starter and their backup in the playoff run. Not that Carter Hutton or Michael Hutchinson are like super confidence building, but like Hutton has had seasons where he's been fine. Obviously he's older now, so I don't expect like prime Carter Hutton, but I also don't think he's as bad as the, like, what is it, a 784 save percentage or something like that this season, because that's only been in like 3 games. So I feel like he might do better behind the Leafs than the Arizona Coyotes. But yeah, I think that's generally what I've heard as to why that trade happened.
Okay.
Well, a trade that fans did like. Nick Ritchie obviously found a new home in Arizona. And as much as I think a lot of Leafs fans wanted to see him succeed, no denying that he struggled a lot on this Leafs team. So obviously he's at the Coyotes organization now. Geez, my goodness. I don't know what just happened to my brain, but it was not working. And then the signal it sent to my mouth just wasn't there. But
it was struggling to remember that the Arizona Coyotes exist.
Honest to God, poor Coyotes. That's a whole, we could talk about that, I'm sure, for another 45 minutes. But we know that Nick Ritchie's in Arizona right now with a conditional second-round draft choice in exchange for defenseman Ilya Lyubushkin and forward Ryan Dzingel. Leafs fans loved this move from Kyle Dubas. And is this something you would give maybe Dubas a big high five for? And do you guys understand this decision?
I want you to go first.
Yeah, like like overall, it's a good move. Like it's nice that Kyle Dubas recognized early on that he made a mistake with the Nick Ritchie signing. Not so much with bringing him in, but I think just that second year was probably the biggest mistake out of all of it. Because that $2.5 million for a cap strap team is a lot of like extra space that they could use. So being able to get rid of, like, I maybe wouldn't give up like a second just to get rid of the Ritchie contract, but I think doing that while then also bringing in Ilya Lyubushkin, who he doesn't have like great offensive numbers, but he's been like a really good defensive defenseman on the Coyotes of all teams. And he's been playing in a top 4 role this season. So I think there's a good chance that like he could be a better, or not better, but like I think he could be a decent option for the Leafs on the blue line. Maybe he's that missing ingredient in the top four alongside Sandin or Muzzin if or when he comes back. Also, I think what's nice about it is this trade happened a month before the deadline. So you get a nice little trial run with Lyubushkin, and then you can figure out if he works in that role. And if he does, good, you get to go trade forward at the deadline instead. Maybe you find that top six forward to play alongside Tavares and Nylander, or he doesn't work and you can just go for a defenseman. And you are then not making this trade at the deadline and hoping that Lyubushkin works, if that makes sense.
I totally agree. And what's great about this trade is, like you said, it's a month before the deadline. And obviously part of me is sad because we won't be seeing Luke Shen become a Leaf anymore, although our managing editor, John, will be very pleased about that. But Lyubushkin, he's had some decent underlying stats. He's played some solid defensive game. And I think that's someone who we've seen have success with the likes of Jacob Chikrin. And obviously obviously the caveat being that they're on the Arizona Coyotes, which are a team that's more interested in tanking for a top lottery pick and going into a smaller arena than competing for the Stanley Cup this year. But Lyubushkin seems like he has a lot of potential, and I think there's something there potentially in the top four, but we won't know for sure until we actually see him on the ice. Hopefully we can see him tonight. Definitely we'll see him on Thursday when the Leafs play the Wild, but I'm very curious to see how this fit is, because I think there has been a gaping hole with Zach Bogosian leaving last summer for a shutdown defenseman who plays a physical style. Obviously, you love to see Jake Muzzin do that, but he can't be the only one that does that role. And that's been a question throughout the season, how they're going to replace Zach Bogosian. And hopefully Ilya Lyubushkin can be the answer to that question. And we'll see how he does down the stretch, because it would be great to see him fill that role and then some.
I feel bad for Nick Ritchie.
I love Nick Barton, the empath. I really do.
I got to, over the span that he was with the Marlies, he didn't talk to reporters the first 2 days that he was there. And then there was one day where he did talk to reporters, and he didn't seem happy about the situation at all. I don't even think he wanted to be moved at the end of the day. I think he would have rather stayed in Toronto, but just that he was playing in his hometown, and it unfortunately didn't work out. You got to feel for him. At least he gets to go to warm and sunny Arizona. That's the good thing, and he'll get a lot of playing time there. Other than that, I think it's an interesting trade when you look at it, because as much as there's so much to be excited about with Lyubushkin, there's not much that's known about him and where he would fit. And I'm excited to see what happens with him and where he does fit, and how, and actually whether or not he can be the defenseman, like Scott said, where he's just stay at home and he can sort of be like Jake Muzzin in a sense, but maybe somebody who's a lot more physical. Jake Muzzin is physical already, but it's an exciting deal just to see where they're at and whether or not they can make another move ahead of the trade deadline. But it's going to be interesting to see how good Lyubushkin can be, especially on a team like the Leafs.
And, well, at the very least, I'd say Lyubushkin is probably an upgrade over Justin Holl, which I think that alone is a success. And again, I sounds like I'm trashing on Holl there, but he's been fine, but it's clear that he can't handle that top four role anymore now that Muzzin isn't prime Jake Muzzin. So just getting that upgrade is okay, maybe this will be where it fits. Also, contractually, it works out very well for both teams, because the Leafs they did have two players on expiring contracts. They lost one of them. It was the same amount of cap space, I believe, going between both trades. Mm-hmm. So for the Leafs, that's done at the end of this year, which means it's no longer a problem. And for the Coyotes, they don't care about cap space. So honestly, just having a guaranteed warm body for next season is probably a good situation for them, because who's going to want to play for them next year?
I would that a lot of people are trashing them having that arena. That arena is going to be amazing.
I think it is a smart like last ditch effort for this franchise because like what better way to get like a solid passionate fan base than to just have super cheap tickets for university students to go to and like pre.
Thank you. I said that to Mike yesterday because he's like, everyone's trashing that arena. And I'm like, but some of the best college basketball arenas in all of America have like not a lot of people can attend because they have small capacities. And I remember hearing, when I played in the US, people would be like, it's so hard to go and play at Duke because it's so loud and not a lot of people can go. So, I mean, if the Arizona Coyotes are able to create something like that, I think it actually might work for them. I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but I'm not hating on it right now because it actually could be a really good idea. Because it's worked in college basketball. So yeah, maybe these college sports fans will want to go to that arena, create some noise. And then next thing you know, it actually really helps the team too, because the atmosphere is completely different. So I'm really excited to see how it plays out, but I'm definitely not hating on it.
The biggest issue is the fact that they're going to be crap for a lot of the time that they're at the arena. So while like in theory you could build a very passionate fan base, I can also see how you don't, because they're like, why are we paying money to watch this? I guess it's free money to see like Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews when they come visit, but there's that side of it as well. Maybe you don't go specifically to cheer for the Coyotes, but just to watch this player murder a franchise in 60 minutes.
I will say this, that's how it started with Toronto FC. And I know that, the stadium's big at BMO, but when Toronto FC first started as a team, as a franchise, they were so bad. It took them like 13 seasons to get good. And people would go solely because one, there was a soccer game on in MLS in Toronto, and two big time players were coming to Toronto to play on the field. Right. And people were like, okay, well, this used to be a guy in the Premier League or in La Liga or wherever that I used to watch growing up. And now he's in Toronto. And then they eventually got good. So Coyotes fans, I really hope that it works out for them, but I'm not hating on it just yet. I'd actually like to see it play out and see how it works out for them. And God forbid Austin Matthews ever leaves the Toronto Maple Leafs and goes to Arizona, but that could be a big play for them too.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about that, I feel like.
I hope not.
First, they got to get an arena deal.
Yeah.
Pardon?
First, they got to get an arena deal because
seriously.
Yeah. I've always said I think if Austin Matthews leaves the Leafs to go anywhere, it's probably New York or LA, because I feel like he'd thrive in the like celebrity lifestyle there.
He would. He live with Justin Bieber, hey?
Yeah, like he likes the spotlight, which is why he also really likes it in Toronto, which is why I feel like he probably stays. But I feel like LA or New York would probably make sense if he did leave.
I say he stays with us too.
I'm just mentally preparing myself for that when it happens, so I'm not heartbroken.
Again, that's another sign of trauma. We don't want to be blindsided, so we're preparing worst case scenario always.
It'd be fun to see like them do, or not the NHL, but like just have players sort of like the NBA where they go all back and forth all the time and like they start developing super teams. That would be fun for a little bit before going back to normal.
Well, and I just want to double check if McDavid's contract ends a year before or after Matthews, because depending on that could be great timing. We have one pretty bad year and then McDavid comes to the Leafs. There we go.
Here's one for one.
I'm going to reserve comments just because of my current location, but that is a very sensitive topic here in Edmonton. And one, if you bring up, you're immediately like, it's an absolute no.
No, it's fine.
Could you just imagine?
They'll be fine because they have Draisaitl and he's amazing from what everyone tells me. And you can definitely build your franchise around that guy.
Hope will never die that Connor McDavid comes to the Leafs.
Maybe it's a year after Tavares' contract is up.
The only reason I don't think Connor's leaving because he built an unbelievable home here. Like, I don't think you build a home like that with a heated driveway. If you're ever planning to leave Edmonton, I mean, maybe, but I also think he likes it here. So hopefully they can.
It doesn't really look like it when you see his face on the ice. He looks kind of done with everything.
Well, it looks like he forgot to turn on his heated driveway.
Yeah, maybe the reason why he just is not engaged in the game is because he's worried about if he left his heated driveway on or not.
Oh, Connor.
Most people are like, "Oh, did I leave the stove on?"
Yeah, that's me. I'm like, did I unplug my hair straightener and did I lock the door? That's usually me. I'm one of those people. But honestly, not to make this about the Oilers, but they've seen some light at the end of the tunnel, and that's a big Jay Woodcroft thing. And Evander Kane, guys, I wasn't sold on that idea of Kane coming to the Oilers, but I have to say he's been one of my favorite guys on the ice. I have to admit, and I wasn't for him coming here at the beginning because I just saw the rumors that there was in San Jose that players, were like, he's not good in the locker room, and they approached the head coach and they were like, here, we want him off the team. But I got to admit, he's helped the team a lot. So maybe the Oilers are going to start trending in the right direction. Connor McDavid's going to get happy. The Oilers make the playoffs. The Oilers have a strong playoff run. The Oilers win the cup, and Connor McDavid stays in Edmonton forever. And I feel like I'm obligated to say that because, again, my current location.
I'm just glad that the slump happened when I played the teams that had McDavid and Draisaitl in their leagues. And I don't think I have to play them again for the rest of the season. So I'm not worried about that automatic loss.
Oh my God, so funny. Okay, let's quickly wrap up this episode. I think we're almost at an hour. Because Scott, I want to talk about your viral tweet that took Twitter by storm, and a lot of you tell me, maybe angry NHLers because I'm going to read your tweet. Mitch Marner gets his 400th career point in just 391 games. For reference, which I love references, Patrick Kane, who's probably considered to be the best playmaking winger in the game, needed 426 games to reach 400. And then the best part of it, because Scott decided to put some salt and some spice into the tweet. Oh, and Marner can actually play defense as well. So talk to me, Scott, because this went viral, got a lot of traction, a lot of engagement. What was the response like?
Honestly, it was fun. There were just so many different arguments to like the points I was making. Like, I will admit, first off, I definitely I could have very just been like, hey, this is Marner's point totals, this is Kane's point totals, just for references to how good Marner's been. But like, I kind of had to I like to just slightly beef it a little bit to make it like, oh, is he better? And like, that sometimes riles the crowd up, sometimes it doesn't. It did in this case. But yeah, there were just so many different arguments. Like, the first one I saw was like, Kane actually isn't the best playmaking winger in the league. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll hear an argument for that. And then people were like, how dare you compare Mitch Marner to Patrick Kane? They're totally not the same player, even though he was kind of I feel like Kane was the comparable for Mitch Marner in the draft. So it's kind of funny that he's just become Patrick Kane, but can play defense. That was another thing too. People were like, oh, how can you prove that Mitch Marner can actually play defense? Like, sure, he plays penalty kill minutes, but that doesn't mean anything. But the overarching one was how dare you, Matt Marner plays with Matthews. So obviously Kane is better because he plays with terrible players. Unless you look at the seasons where he specifically had really good years and look at his line mates, and it usually is either Artemi Panarin or Alex DeBrincat, which, not saying those guys are at the level of Matthews and Tavares. Oh, actually, no, I'd be willing to say Panarin is probably better than Tavares when he's been with the Leafs. But Kane hasn't been playing with slouches when he's lit it up either. So there's definitely more comparison to that. Oh, and then there was all the people that were like, oh, well, maybe they should win a round first, or Kane has 3 cups, so he's obviously better. And it's sure, but I'm not going to listen to an argument about how Justin Williams is better than Jerome McGinley because he won 3 cups, at that point, it's a team thing and not so much actual skill part of it. Yeah, it was just a lot of different responses to the point where I just muted it. But like the main thing I was trying to go for was more just like, hey, like we don't appreciate how productive Mitch Marner has been in his career. Like he's above a point per game over his career, which like I don't know too many Leafs that have done that. He's already like how high up in like franchise scoring leaders. Yeah, like I think just especially with how rough the start of the season was for him, just to see him like improve the way he has, and like he seems like his confidence is definitely back at this point, especially in the goal scoring department, which has helped the power play so much because now people actually treat Mitch Marner as a shooting threat and they leave Matthews open a bit more, and it causes more chaos in that sense. So yeah, all that, the long story short, I think we just need to appreciate Mitch Marner more, especially considering, you know, he's been scoring at a better pace than Patrick Kane.
I love an episode where we give Mitch Marner a shout out because I could not agree more. One question I have for you is, did you regret regret pressing send on that tweet at all when all of these comments started coming in, or are you proud of your stance?
Yeah, I think Mitch Marner is better than Patrick Kane. So, okay. But like, yeah, I don't regret sending tweets unless it's like actually problematic, which I don't think I've had anything like that to this point. So yeah, like it's sometimes I let it get to me, sometimes I don't. Usually once it reaches the point where it's starting to, I just mute it and then problem solved.
For you guys. All right, let's wrap this up. Toronto versus Columbus tonight. Columbus 25-23-1, kind of in the middle of the pack in the Metro. In a game, obviously, that Toronto needs to bounce back from this kind of really bad weekend and come back and find a way to get it together on the ice tonight. And obviously, Muzzin will be missing, and there's a lot of storylines going on, but a really good chance for Toronto, to come out with a dub and make Leafs fans happy because they were not happy this weekend. So a game where the boys can get it done for sure.
Absolutely. And Columbus is going to be a legitimate threat. So the Leafs cannot slouch this game, even though they did travel and they did play yesterday. Columbus is within 11 points of a playoff spot. Obviously, the playoff picture in the East, a lot of people don't really talk about is how more or less set in stone it is. But Columbus could theoretically make a run and make things very interesting because Patrick Laine has been playing stellar hockey of late. The team as a whole has been playing really well. And I think it's just they've got a good structure. So the Leafs need to come prepared. They cannot afford another slow start because that's what killed them, at least in the previous two games. That's what basically was their downfall. No, they need a solid start tonight. And you know what would help more than anything would be a productive night from Tavares and Nylander, because those two could use a big night.
Yeah, I think if a lot of Leafs fans are expecting the same Columbus team we saw like a couple of years ago, even just stylistically, they're going to be extremely confused because after losing a lot of like key defensive players on the team, like Dubois, Nick Foligno, unfortunately, they lost him. I could have preferred seeing him stay on the team last season as opposed to where he went. Or even like David Savard on the blue line. He was such a big part of like just establishing like a really strong defensive core. Even like Riley Nash to a lesser extent was really key to that stretch of Columbus when they were pretty competitive defensively. Also, they don't have Tortorella behind the bench, who, is kind of the mastermind of all that. So like at this point, they're honestly like what the Leafs were in like 16-17, where it was just like no defense, all offense, except they don't have Frederik Andersen in that. They have Korpisalo and Merzlikins when they're healthy. Tonight it's actually going to be JF Berube, who did get his first win in over 4 years the other night. But so I think it's going to be a high scoring one because the Leafs are playing a team that can't really defend anymore and is all in on offense, to combine with the fact that they also just like their goaltending hasn't been good. So I feel like Jack Campbell is probably going to allow a few more tonight. So that'll be the unfortunate part, but it should be entertaining at least. I don't know if they'll win because this just has all the makings for another chaotic game for me, but it'll be fun, hopefully.
I was just going to say it's either going to be they're going to get goalied or they're going to have a blowout. It's either one or the other.
One end of the spectrum or the other, hey?
Yep.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see what it's like. Let's end on our songs because we haven't done this in a while. I'll start it off. I was asked recently what my favorite concert that I've ever been to was, and it was between, just in terms of performances, Chris Stapleton and The Fray, because it was just unbelievable. It sounded like I was listening to them on the radio. So my song is Over My Head by The Fray, because that's a high school song that I used to literally sing on the top of my lungs, and one that till this day when it comes on I get so happy. So that's my pick.
I'm going to go with a song that was being played at the Super Bowl not too long ago. I should shout out that Super Bowl halftime performance, which was probably one of the better ones we've seen in the last little while. And I'm going to go with a song from Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg, Still Dre. I think it's a killer song. I love the beat. It just gets you pumped. It's a great song. So definitely listen to it if you haven't listened to it yet.
Yeah, that definitely was. How often, not just like this one, but even like last year's like halftime show at the Weeknd. When's the last time we've seen like two really good Super Bowl halftime shows back to back? I feel like it's been a while. They've been pretty inconsistent with those.
Who was before the Weeknd? Was it Shakira?
And J-Lo, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say it's 3 in a row, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if I even watched that game, so I'm probably not one to comment on it. For me, my song is one I discovered a couple weeks ago, and it's been pretty much on repeat since. It's called Broken by Alfie Templeman. Just like kind of has like, those like negative undertones as far as like, maybe not everything's okay, but it's set to like a really catchy, upbeat beat. So I always kind of find songs like that fun. And might also be kind of descriptive of the Leafs right now. Might not be. We'll find out.
Mine, I don't know how I found it. I think I just had it shuffling. I don't know if any of you guys know. It's called City of Gods, and it's by, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Fivio Foreign. I know that's probably right, and it's Alicia Keys and Kanye West. It's Alicia Keys goes really hard in the song, and that's like the chorus is her, and it's really, really cool. So yeah, it's a really like energetic song, and it's very like, loud and big, which is why I probably like it.
Guys, just for people listening, what's our playlist called on Spotify so people can access it?
Let me pull it up.
Also, if anyone has not seen the first episode of Kanye's trilogy on Netflix, you have to watch it. It's so freaking good.
Okay. The the playlist is called the TLN Radio Podcast. Shit show of a playlist with both S's and shit show $signs. And the graphic is one of Nick's many offensive puns. So it shouldn't be hard to spot.
Amazing. Well, guys, check that podcast out. Whether you're, going through a tough time with the Toronto Maple Leafs, you need some motivation or whatever you may need, because I feel like there's a song for every type of emotion possible in every season of your life. So check that playlist out. And yeah, we'll be back next Monday with another episode and hopefully lots of good stuff to report on. Hey?
Hopefully good.
You guys said that at the exact same time. Yes, hopefully. Knock on wood. All right, everyone. This has been episode 21. Caroline here with Nick, Michael, and Scott, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to TLN Radio, a member of the Nation Network of Podcasts and delivered by DoorDash. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and never miss an episode.